Welcome, listeners slash viewers or viewers, as I like to call you, to Dear Rach and Soph. And I am Sophie Green. The laugh you could hear is from my lovely friend.
Rachel Johns. I have heard that I apparently have a quite distinctive laugh, which I didn't even know. Or maybe it's just loud. When I was at the Romance Writers Conference a few months ago, um, were like, "Oh, I knew where you were because I heard Rachel's laugh." And so I
And
was
we're
like,
saying a
"Oh,
few months ago because at the time this will be published or posted, rather, it will have been a few months ago because this is actually one of our last episodes we're recording for the year because we banked so many
I
uh,
know."
that we're kind of out of slots. And also, we have some things we need to do. Rachel, let's talk
We
about what
do.
you're doing.
Well, for the rest of the year, yeah, I'm feeling quite stressed by what's going, what's what I have to do. I have to finish my solo title for next year, which is Someone Else's Fortune. And I've had a bit of, at the time we're speaking, I've had a few weeks off for travel and then just trying to get back into it and then being sick. So you always think there's more time, and then the time starts ticking away. And as well as that, I'm also that's due at the end of the year. And then also my first co-written book with Mercedes Mercier is due um, at the beginning of the year, the end of January. So there's basically for the first time in my life, I'm trying to write two books at once, which is interesting. I started like last week. I started on Monday and Tuesday. I started a routine I thought that I was going to do. And then Wednesday I was like exhausted and sick. And I'm not sure if it was because of the routine. I don't think it was. I think it was just, but it kind of got out of the routine. But my goal again is this week to start getting up very first thing in the morning. For me, that's about 6 o'clock. I'm going to wake up, going to bring my laptop into my bed and write for an hour on my solo book.
Mhm.
Then I get out and walk the dog, but I've kind of like already like I've got this from Claire Connolly's productivity workship that she did at the Art of Way conference, which is amazing. Just to get some stuff out of the way, the writing out of the way before anything else kind of inputs into the day. Then I
Mhm.
walk the dog, think I have a shower, and then do a few more hours on that book. Then I have a nap. This is my goal to try and switch my mind from someone else's fortune to Insta Detectives. The
Yeah.
first 2 days it was working pretty well, but I said then I got sick. But I'm going to give it another attempt this week. What about you? Oh, and I also, of course, have my next book, The Lucky Sisters, coming out soon, and I'll be doing
Mhm.
a 3 week tour. So that's always in my mind. I mean, you've had a book out recently. The lead up to the book coming out, there's other promotional things you have to do. So, I feel like my mind is being torn by three books at the moment, and
Yeah.
actually almost four because I'm also aware that I have to work out what to write next. Because, so, anyway, how are you going?
I'm going well. Before we get to me, though, I'd like to actually ask you because this is something I'm fond of saying about changing habits or whatever, is that it's good to know your own nature. So, are you by
Hmm.
nature a lark? As in,
No.
right.
Yeah.
So,
And
I'm
I'm
going to,
thinking maybe I will not do that. The only good thing that it was good is I find it really hard to fit the dog walking in, because when summer comes, I can't walk during the day. And that
right.
is what I like to do. I like to have a break in the middle of the day and and exercise the dog. But I
Yeah.
can't do that in the summer. So getting into the habit of getting up and walking her is not a bad thing. But I'm also not a I'm what that meme? I'm not a lark. I'm not a what's it? I'm not a early bird. I'm not a night owl. I'm a permanently exhausted pigeon. So like I can't work at nights either anymore. So I think basically it's good to know your nature, and I think in some ways maybe that won't necessarily work for me. Although I did like the just focusing on the book for an hour, not necessarily forcing myself to write lots of words, but just sort of getting into it before doing anything else, then doing a few other things, and then sort of feeling like I was already back in the book. Rather than my normal routine is wake up about 6:37, get up, stumble to the, office, faff around for an hour looking at Facebook and Instagram and, all those different things, doing emails, and then starting to get in the zone, which takes me for a while. So, and then starting probably about 8:39 to actually write. And in the end, that's probably the similar what I'm doing with this new routine, except I've already worked on the book for an hour. So anyway, we'll see how we go. I'll give it
Yeah.
another shot, but like you said, know your nature.
Well, may I suggest you actually walk the dog first?
That's what I was thinking of too. But okay, here's the thing. It's still very cold here now. So like I'm in that at 6 o'clock walking the dog, my fingers freeze, and I'm not actually I haven't got any I need to get prepared for that because I need to get some gloves or something. But yes, that's a good idea. Get
Because
up,
then
walk the
actually you've
dog.
got the blood's pumping, the prana's moving around, the energy's moving around the
Yeah.
body, and then when if you actually walk the dog for an hour or however long, came in and then wrote,
Yeah.
you probably actually be more in sync with your usual rhythm, because what you're doing at
Yes.
the moment, this is yoga teacher me speaking, is that you are imposing a quite different rhythm at the start of your day. You are writing as opposed to, as you said, easing into it the way you normally would. So you've
Yeah.
actually done a hard change there. You're putting
Is
writing
that why I was
into
sick
your
on
dog.
Wednesday?
I think it's entirely possible. Your body, basically your biorhythms have gone, what? And
Yeah.
so if you actually walked the dog first, that would sort of spark things up. And then you'd still be getting your hour of writing, and it would just be at a time when you're more likely to have been in the office anyway,
Yeah.
right?
I think I will try that this week. I'm gonna look for some gloves today.
Yeah. And then you set up for summer, right? So then you set up to walk out of here early,
Yeah.
and then get into your writing early, and then it's not disrupting you too much, because there is
Yeah.
a lot going on in the brain having two stories at once. I'm actually surprised you've never written two books at once before, given your output.
Well, I've edited one book while
Yeah,
being
but not
writing
writing.
another.
Yeah.
And I've also, so often I always think, because it's very annoying to have to stop one book, to
Hmm.
edit another or to,
Yeah.
so often I always think, especially with copy edits, oh, you know what I'll do? I'll do my book that I'm writing in the morning and I'll do copy edits in the afternoon. But then invariably, and this is about, I guess, knowing your nature, I like to get one job done. So
Oh,
I'm just like, nah, let's just get the copy edits done,
right.
right? And out the way again. And so I think I'm actually very much struggling with having, oh, not very much, but writing two books at once. We don't want to
Mhm.
do that next year.
Yeah.
It's kind of something that we just have to do because this year has been, you
It's the
know,
way the rhythms have worked out. Yeah.
yeah. But moving forward, we are planning to split our year up kind of 7 months on our own book and stuff and 5 months on the other
Okay.
because in theory it should be less time when we've two of us. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that will be better. That will give me, will feel like I'm not spread so thin. So I'm kind of just like, got to get this done, got to get through the year. And then hopefully, it's always like, you think, oh, once all those things are over, life will be quiet again. And never is because some other
No,
things come.
it's
Anyway, we've only got a few minutes till our guest comes. So I want to hear how you're going with your new book.
not as much as I haven't written as much as I would like, and it's not because I don't love it, because I do actually love it. But I've had a very busy time at work. I don't actually like using the word busy, but I've had a lot on at work, and I've been working like 12-hour, 14-hour days. And
Why don't you like using the word busy?
well, because it's become this sort of thing of I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm so busy. It's like, because I just think these are self-imposed things, right? I've chosen to write books. I've chosen to have my country music project.
Hmm.
And busyness sort of implies it's there's a phrase called Western laziness, which I
Yep.
discovered when I was not in a Western country, which is basically we keep ourselves busy so that we're not, because we're too lazy to be still. Um,
Interesting.
and I do think that that's
Oh, I
valid.
would love to be still.
That's not why, yeah, that's not why I'm busy, but I think it's more just, yeah, it's because I've chosen it, and busyness sounds like something that's been imposed on
Yep,
my
I
life.
gotcha.
Maybe I'm being
Anyway,
too
back
pedantic
to the
about it.
book. Sorry for interrupting.
That's right. So yeah, so I've had that, and also, I make two podcasts. I have other things going on, and I had a new book out. So I've done quite a lot of. I think this one's been different because I'm kind of restructuring it before I'm writing it more than any other book I've written. I
Oh,
have written quite a bit of it, but I'm also, there are things popping up in my mind about it where I think, no, actually, I don't want to do it that way. I'm going to do it that way. So I've been doing a lot more tinkering ahead with the storyline than I would normally do. But I think
same,
it's
actually. Maybe we
right.
should have a full-on chat about this, record that, and talk about our writing
I think
process
it's a
with this
good thing, and
book.
I think maybe it is because you have a lot on. You're writing the two books at once. I've got a lot on, so I think what my brain's doing is actually sorting out structural issues without me getting it on the page first, which I quite
Yeah,
like as an efficiency, because
I
I'm
like it too, but then I also think, oh, I'm worried, like, am I just procrastinating?
No, I don't think it's that. I think it's really just that we've had enough experience now that our brains are basically sorting it out for us, which is
I also think mine's a bit
mind.
of fear. I do think I'm procrastinating a bit with fear because I'm like, I'm scared I can't do it. So it's like
Oh,
just,
okay,
you know,
Rachel, I'm here to tell you, you absolutely can do it. Sorry.
well,
Just
this
no
book is a bit
way you
different. It's like
can't.
this is why mine is kind of a sliding doors kind of book. So I've done a spreadsheet for the first time where I have the two timelines. Well, they're parallel timelines, so they're not, different timelines. But I'm, having to work out what's happening in each. I want the things to reflect in each one. So that's more why I've kind of done this more sort of thinking ahead because I know that I don't think this is the kind of story. Probably if I had all the time in the world, and that's often the thing we've talked about before, like I think if I had, 2 years to do it, maybe I would just write and see what happens. But I don't have 2 years. I've got basically 2 months. So I need to, um, I need to make sure that there's things happening. And they're talking about nature. I feel like that works a bit against my nature as well. So it's
Right.
I'm uncomfortable with it. But
Yeah.
I think it's not necessarily, and I just see what you think, it's not necessarily bad to do things out of your comfort zone and to try things differently
The
sometimes. Please
friction
tell me
can
that's the
be,
case.
yeah, the friction can be useful actually. I do think that the friction can produce some good work because you're not being lazy essentially
Yeah.
about your habits. Now, the easiest thing for you to do actually, given the success you've had and how many books you've written, is to carry on the way things have always been. That would be fine, and no one would be unhappy with that. But you're choosing to create some friction because you want to write a new sort of story. I would imagine, knowing you want to get better with every single book, and so
Yes, definitely.
you've actually come up with this yourself to create some friction to make this new story. And so I think that's great. And it's just a part of the fear and maybe the procrastination, if we want to interpret it that way, is not actually real procrastination. It's just your mind needing the space to sort things out because it's reorganizing patterns.
Yeah.
Your brain is reorganizing
Oh, just
patterns.
love this Sophie therapy. See? We
So
haven't had enough Dear H and Soph therapy lately.
because we've had too much on. Rach, our guest today is Michael Brissenden, who was a
Yay.
journalist and foreign correspondent with the ABC for 35 years. He was posted to Moscow, Brussels, and Washington, and worked in Canberra for many years in various roles, including as the political editor for ABC TV's 7:30 and as a reporter with the ABC's investigative television documentary program Four Corners. Through his reporting, Michael has covered bushfires both in Australia and overseas, including in California. He has published 3 previous books. Now, the latest book is Dust, and I'm holding it up for those of you who
I'm
are
holding it up
listening.
here too. I'm only halfway through though.
Only the viewers, not the listeners, are going to see Dust. So it's not for all viewers. And the blurb goes, Lake Hedden, a once thriving community, now lies in the shadow of a nearly dry lake. The town, like the water, is evaporating, and its residents are left clinging to what little remains. When Aaron Love discovers a fresh corpse near the cracked lake bed, along with evidence his missing father is alive and linked to a web of organised crime, he is thrust into a world of deception, injustice, and betrayal. With the town on the brink of collapse, Aaron and a haunted detective, Martin Kravitz, uncover a web of conspiracy that reaches far beyond the small community. Dust is a dark, gripping thriller that explores the complexities of identity, a search for truth, and the unyielding forces of corruption in a world where lives are lived on the fringe and nothing is as it seems. So, we're going to have a few questions to ask Michael, I think, about how journalism plays into fiction writing and maybe vice versa, and also about the themes that are in this novel, because the previous novel was called Smoke and this one's called Dust. So, I think there's something developing there. So, I'm going to put us on hold and we'll go and get Michael. Rachel, our guest Michael Brissenden is here, and I'm very
Yes.
happy to talk to him. Hello, Michael.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. Nice
So
to
excited to talk to you as well. I've been really enjoying your book so far. So no spoilers.
no spoilers.
No spoilers. So yes, we do try to keep things quite spoiler free, so it can sound like we're sort of hovering around the beginning of stories, because especially when it's this sort of novel where there are details that may later turn out to be relevant, I don't ever want to give away too much. But I am going to start by saying last year you released Smoke, which was set in California. Now this year it is Dust. There is clearly a theme developing. So
there's
environmental
the
theme.
one-word title. That's right.
Yeah.
But also environmental elements.
Yes, yeah, there is environmental elements.
Are you going like is there going to be more along those themes?
Who knows? What's the next one? I don't know. I haven't got there yet. But
Do you
I'm
ever
sure-
just so I'm guessing? Sorry, Soph, I've already gone in. I was like, did the title come post the book, or the titles come
No,
first for you?
you know,
or-
I actually wanted to call the book "Everyone's Looking for Love,"
Oh, I like it.
but
This book.
yes,
Wow.
but because one of the people
Yeah.
that people are looking for is a person called Tobias Love.
Yes, I
And,
love that.
But the publishers thought that might confuse the reader too much, which
Yeah.
fair enough, fair enough.
Well, Sophie, as a publisher, what do you think about that? Because Sophie's
Well-
often spoken about titles having to match covers, having to match, obviously, content.
I mean, look, to be honest, this works really well. The cover works well. The name's great. I actually started writing this book with the title Dust. And then I finished it. I got to, I thought, oh no, I want to call it something else. And
I kind of love Everybody's Looking for Love because of
Yeah.
the title of the name, but I can understand why people might be
Yeah.
confused if you didn't
Yeah.
hear
Yeah.
or know the genre that you write in. But I love a title that's a play on something like that or a little bit longer sometimes.
But I actually wonder, so now that you've mentioned this, Michael, like my publisher brain is going, if you had that cover treatment
yes.
and the title Everyone's Looking for Love, that could have been quite interesting,
Good,
actually.
you think? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh well,
So-
maybe I should have insisted.
well, maybe there can be an author's cut.
Yeah, that's right. the author's cut.
I'm very interested in titles because I'm thinking about titles for my next book at the moment. The one that I like, my publisher doesn't like. So I've spent half my morning actually trying to come up with a title that I like as well. So I'm very much thinking, and I love along the lines of Everyone's Looking for Love. That is so cool.
I get it. It's a dark art. I know nothing about that side of the business. So, you leave it to the experts in the end.
It's also one of those things that you can't really know whether like another title would have been better or worse. You just have to go with what, and hope for the best. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that then begs the question, did you have the title Smoke on the previous novel, or was that
No, I didn't. And I can't even, it was something I can't even remember what title I had on that. But anyway, we settled on Smoke in the end, which, with that book and with this book as well, those titles are like, this idea of smoke or dust or whatever, it's something you can see, but you can't hold, you can't contain. It's sort of something that conceals things, but then reveals things. Those titles have really worked well with the books. So, I'm being a bit facetious. With my title that I wanted, I get it why publishers decide that they want to do something different, which actually worked beautifully with both of these books, actually, I think.
And they obviously wanted to brand you. So, I looked at your earlier title. I think I've taken them. Oh no, I've still got your they are very similar, the look of The List and Dead List.
Yes.
And then these two are they look slightly different. I haven't read the others. Are they in the similar ilk, or are you sort of done something different?
So the first two books were very much sort of thrillers, really, rather than police procedurals, and probably more political and intelligence-based thrillers, really, really much more based on my direct experience as a correspondent in defense and security issues, so very much a reflection of that sort of world. And these books are they're just completely different.
I feel like asking another question, but I don't want to keep jumping in. So
Rachel, as I said earlier,
my other question then was it like why did you change? Why did you decide you just felt like doing something different? Have you always enjoyed sort of this kind of crime novel? And what was the reason?
Well, I think the first books I wrote, like the first one I wrote particularly, was because it was a reflection of, at the time I was the defense and security correspondent for the ABC, and it was around the time when everybody was talking about domestic terrorism, and there was a lot of stuff that I was hearing from a lot of people, particularly in the intelligence community and in the ethnic communities, and a lot of the things that I was witnessing and experiencing in the way that politics was manipulating the situation, and the way that the whole thing was becoming a very, very difficult discourse within our community. And I couldn't really cover that in a journalistic sense. And I had always been, I've been writing fiction for a long time and nothing had ever clicked. And then I thought, well, maybe I should just try and write something that allows me to sort of get into the nuance of that whole thing, so I could talk about how it was impacting the community, how it was
Mm.
impacting the intelligence community who could not get close to that community in a way that they needed to the media who was manipulating the situation for various reasons, and the politics who were manipulating the situation. All of that, you can write it to a certain extent within a journalistic framework, but you can't really, I didn't think, I couldn't cover the whole nuances of that whole thing and actually write a good story that people were going to be interested in reading. And so that's how that sort of developed. I mean, I didn't necessarily want to write a political intelligence thriller, but that's really the space I was in.
Yeah.
And when I'd done that book, then I had a 2-book deal to do a second book, and I did another book which was basically using the same cop character and doing another sort of politically based intelligence type thriller. And then I thought at the end of that, I thought, like I'm sort of a bit done with that. I'd quite like to, I want to move away from that and actually explore using my fiction in completely different ways. So that's how I ended up.
That makes sense.
These ones, yeah.
So I'm interested that you said, Michael, that you had been writing fiction for quite a while, but it wasn't clicking. So when did you actually start originally, and what prompted you to start? Was it perhaps a relief from your day job, in inverted commas? Because I think your day job probably seeped into your day and night job at certain points.
I've always had a thing about, I've always wanted to write fiction, and like I guess like a lot of people who write all the time, particularly in a very constrained journalistic formula a lot of the time, even when you're making television documentaries, which are far bigger, broader subjects, you still are constrained by the sort of conventions of what you're doing, and you're actually telling someone else's story. You're not telling your story, and fiction has always appealed to me because it uses a completely different muscle in your writing brain, and you are telling a story that is about your experience, but also you can let the story go wherever it wants, and it can take its own life, and does take its own life often. And so I wrote I wrote a couple of I wrote one particular novel length story about 25 years ago, which I thought was okay. And I sent it to a whole lot of publishers and agents and all the rest of it, and no one got back to me except for one agent, who was the famous agent Lynn Tranter, and she came back to me and she said, look, it's not really for me, it's not really something I'm interested in, but I did love that sentence in chapter 4. And I thought, well,
that's a great rejection.
I've got something, keep going. So,
now the question is, have you ever plucked that sentence and used it again in anything?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
I'm really curious to know what that sentence was.
Well, look, it's something about how it was a novel centered on a kid who'd basically been sucked up in a corrupt soccer transfer, and he'd ended up flown into Moscow, and it was like, and the sentence was something like, and the traffic sucked them into the heart of the city, and it was something like that. Anyway, one sentence in 95,000 words.
Well, look, Lynn is a hard marker, as we like to say. So I think that was like a legitimate compliment.
Yes.
But also, so years ago, Michael, I worked on a book with, I was the editor of a book by Ian McPhedran, who used to be the chief defence writer for News Corporation. And I remember getting a sense, just not from him directly, as in things he was saying, but more just becoming aware of his work. When you're working on defence as a journalist, it is this big, complex subject where you have many moving parts, many agendas to keep track of, many big personalities, yes, governments and media and all sorts of things, and it can be global depending on what's happening at the time with the defense forces and all those sorts of things. So I would think in some ways it would give you rich fodder for, well, not in some ways, in a lot of ways it would give you rich fodder to write about, because you have this sense of actually the heart of darkness, for lack of a better term, of humans. And the sacrifices that can be made by people who are not directly involved. And all of this is part of storytelling.
And there's a lot you can't tell when you're writing the sort of books that Ian writes, right? You're writing basically factually based histories, in a sense. This is what happened. And I wasn't really interested in doing that. What I was interested in doing was trying to explore the nuance of the whole thing through fiction, which luckily for me, it sort of worked finally, you know.
Well, Lynn pulled out a sentence from that first manuscript, and I actually pulled out a short sentence from this book from Dust, which is there's a line in the text, journalism is conflict.
Yeah.
And which I
yeah.
found interesting because it's sort of like this metatextual thing. Of course, you as the novelist and journalist writing this. And so since we're talking about, to be literal about it, defense, working on defense as a journalist, but journalism in general, I'm wondering for you, if we look at journalism as conflict as opposed to writing fiction, is there one word you'd use to apply to writing fiction?
Oh, wow.
Impressive.
That's a tough one. Yeah, no, I don't have a single word that comes to mind. But I mean, essentially, every great story is conflict, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
you know, every great story is one thing coming up hard against another, and how that's resolved or not resolved is ultimately where the story goes. So, you know, in that sense, when you're, you know, to make journalism, to make great journalism, you know, they tell you, you know, journalism is conflict. It's about, you know, we need these, you need the tension in the story. You need it to, you know, to engage people. You need that sort of tension. And I don't necessarily think that that's true all of the time, but you know, we're storytellers. Whether you're writing journalism or you're writing fiction, whatever, you are telling a story, and you need to engage the reader. And you need to. I often say, even, you know, like if you look at great documentary making, for instance, it's very similar to writing a novel, because you've got to capture people's attention in the first bit of that thing, and you have to they have to want to keep going. And you have to leave them with something that is going to resonate with them long after it's over. And I think fiction is very similar, and that's certainly genre fiction. You know, this fiction that I'm writing, very similar. You want to explode people's heads to start with, give them something that is like this image that is going to catapult the story through the rest of the story, and you want to leave them with something at the end that, you know, they think about for a long time afterwards. Hopefully, I mean, that's what I'd like to try and do anyway.
No,
Well,
definitely.
you absolutely have with Dust, because when we open, you really set the scene. We have a dry lake bed, we have crows pecking at a dead body, and we have Aaron Love and his very distinctive voice. And I'm wondering if he was the character who came to you first for Dust.
He
And
was.
why the word love? I love that.
Yeah, why the name Love?
Just because of the central nature of conflict as well. You know, it's like, here's this guy who is, you know, that's what he's looking for. That's what he wants. His whole life is consumed.
Yeah.
He's trying to find some sort of love, and his name's Love. And it's like this sort of, I don't know, that just worked for me with him. It worked because his life is loveless until he finds this young woman who actually ends up sending him into this spiral of sort of conflict in a way, and circumspection that he never saw coming. So yeah, I mean, could have called him anything, I guess, but it just struck me that was the right thing to call him.
Yeah.
Well, because naming characters is
hard, right?
a real responsibility, you know, and it's not just a surname, but first names, because they has to. So have you ever had with any of your novels, and Rachel, you probably have, like I have, where you name one of them or some of them, and you start to think, oh no, that's not right. I don't know, that's not the right.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it has to be right to me to sort of go on. I can't start until I've got the character's name right for some reason, or it just doesn't feel right starting, and it doesn't flow until I've got that.
Yeah.
And Michael, for you, has there ever been a character where you've given them a name and you've gone quite a way and you thought, oh no, I can't do that anymore?
Definitely. It's happened a lot. And sometimes it's a really simple thing, like you've got too many characters starting with M, you know.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
It's so funny how we don't notice that.
S and J seem to be the letters that I use a lot.
This is too confusing, you know.
And each book seems to have a specific letter.
Yeah, that's right. And in the case of this one, it was a classic, right? So I know I'm giving a bit away here, but one of the other characters is called Zadie Kravitz. And I wrote the entire manuscript and called her Zoe. and I had no idea that you know, like I got to the end, it's like Zoe Kravitz. You can't call your character Zoe Kravitz. So I had to change it to Zadie. So
But
there.
obviously the Z sound clearly
Yeah,
resonates.
but I wanted to keep that whole thing, you know, like the father and the daughter relationship through the book, where he keeps abbreviating her name to Zippy or Zips or whatever. You know, they have this sort of relationship, and so it was important to keep that.
I like their relationship, and
Yeah,
you know, I
that's
think
good.
it's quite
I like their,
often,
yeah.
you know, often the daughter feels closer to her dad sometimes, and the mother is kind of the one, like even though he's really a cop, you know, the whole bad cop, good cop thing. But don't worry, I once had a character called Holly Wood, and I didn't even click until
There you are. Yeah,
the end. And she was
exactly.
only a side kind of character, but my publisher was like, she was a sister-in-law of one of the main characters, and my publisher was like, unless you're going to make something of this, you
Yeah.
have to. I was like, whoops.
Change it. Can't be Hollywood. Yeah.
Now, the Zadie, formerly Zoe Kravitz, we're talking about, is the daughter of Martin Kravitz, who is our detective in Dust. And so we have Aaron, who came first. Was Martin hot on his heels, or did it take you a while to find him?
No, I always had him in mind too. You know, he was I mean, it's a bit of a sort of a trope, you know, this old cop who's been around for a long time, has got cynical over the years and, you know, the decades. But this is this area that I love exploring with police, because there really isn't anyone else, you know, this whole first responder thing where people their entire life, every day they see something that would send most people into a PTSD.
Yeah.
And at some point after 20 years or so, it's going to have an impact. It is definitely going to have an impact.
Sure.
And the relationship between him and the younger, more sort of idealistic cop, he knows what she's about to go through, and she's looking at him and going, oh my God, like, is this really how bad it gets? And their relationship is sort of quite it's central to the narrative of the book, but it's really quite an important one, because in the end they both get something out of each other, even though they're both very, very different. And he is, you know, I really love exploring that idea about the idealism that drives people into these jobs, and the cynicism that comes after so long in being in them, and the damage that is inflicted on them personally and mentally, and their whole view of the world, you know. But he hasn't completely lost it, and he recognizes it in this young woman who's come on, as much as he sort of resents the fact that this person has come on who is highly educated and comes from a completely different background and comes with this idealistic sort of view of the world. He sees it and he understands it. He sees something of himself in what she is and what he was, you know.
Yeah. And I think there's that friction again, idealism and cynicism.
Yes.
Against each other. And I know someone who left the cops because she said she was quite tired of meeting people for the first time on the worst day of their lives. And I think is a really succinct way to put it. But I actually one of journalists as well, if that happens a bit.
Well, it does. It's true. It's very sort of similar in a way, particularly if you're a conflict journalist. If you're working in war zones and difficult situations, you're often seeing people on their worst day. Exactly. There's a point in Dust where he says, yeah, there's not many happy days in our business. And it's true. Yeah. There just are not very many happy days in our business. But that's your job, right? And you do it for 20 years or 25 years, that's going to have a toll.
Yeah. I listened to a podcast recently with Jojo Moyes, who also started her life as a journalist before becoming a very successful novelist. And she said exactly that she, you know, she would sort of switch off and she'd go to a bus crash, you know, and half people had died and stuff. And then she didn't, you know, she'd managed to switch off until later when she suddenly realized, oh, hang on, those people, the bodies that she was walking amongst and counting, they actually belong to other people, like to people's families and different stuff. You know, so... But what I was actually leading into there is obviously a lot of journalists do become very successful novelists. And I imagine, I always hear the discipline and the being able to write to deadline and to take, you know, feedback on board. All that stuff sort of prepares you well for a life of writing fiction. And I wonder if you can say how you felt your journalism has helped you, or maybe not helped you, in writing fiction.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting question. It's not a new thing either. Like, you know, this is not a new phenomenon, journalists.
No.
Fiction. It goes way back, you know, Dickens, Hemingway. There's so many people who are, like, not that I'm anywhere on that level, but a lot of journalists do end up writing fiction.
Yeah.
I think there are some essential differences, And it takes a while, it's taken me a while anyway, to fully understand what those differences are. One is journalists have a tendency to over-explain everything. And
maybe I should have been a journalist.
yeah, but fiction is not, you have to give the reader agency. They have to have some sort of, you can't keep explaining stuff all the way through. They have to be able to follow it and make their own path through it. And that to me is, and the other thing about journalistic writing is it's very constrained usually, you know. And sometimes I have to go back and I have to look at what I've written and go, pull the explanations out, get rid of them, and pump the poetry in. You know, like it's an important distinction between, especially when you're writing fast, and you know when you have those moments when you're writing, where you're just going, this is going, and you're just going, and then you go back and read it, and you go, actually, I don't need to say all of that. There's a whole lot of stuff there I don't need to say. There's got to come out, and there's stuff that I need to put in that is very different to the sort of my journalistic training, you know. I think I'm getting better at it, but it's one of those things that I think journalists in particular fall into the trap of basically thinking fiction can just be sort of an extension of your journalism, just using a different part of your brain. But actually, I think it's quite a different way to write.
Yeah, well, I feel like I'm okay at writing fiction, but I don't think I can write, you know, journalist newspaper articles and feature articles and stuff like that. Yeah, it's very different. Are you?
Well, so you're telling someone else's story, right?
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
a journalist, you're telling someone else's story essentially, or you're providing some context or analysis around real events. When you're writing fiction, you're telling your story, and it's a different thing. It's much more. In the lead up to publication of fiction, I'm much more anxious about
interesting.
About, publishing anything to do with journalism.
Is that because like it is you? It's like your heart and soul you put onto the page and stuff. And if people say I don't like it or this isn't good, you feel closer to it maybe than your journalist
most
articles.
definitely. You know,
are you
anyway.
Are you a do you plot your books out, or are you more an organic writer, or a bit of both?
Yeah, a bit of both. Yeah.
I think you have to be a bit of both to be doing at a pace, really.
Yeah. And I love it when you're writing away and it takes you somewhere you never saw it was coming. You know, that's the moment you go, this is actually working really well because I didn't see that coming. And we're going down here, and I'm not writing journalism. I can go down there with it. I can follow it.
And see what happens. Yeah, follow it. I know. I have to remind myself sometimes to just go with things and not to question. Because when you are writing to deadline and stuff, sometimes I'm worried about time and stuff, but you know, it is those sort of moments that you can really find the heart of the story or the gold that's there if your subconscious knows so much more than you sometimes, I think.
Definitely. Yeah.
And Michael, I know a lot of your work as a journalist was on camera, but I'm also interested in how you've responded to the editorial process, because I've published a lot of nonfiction books, quite a few of them written by journalists. I love working with journalists because they're used to being edited, partly because they just understand that there is this process that happens. And for print journalists, their copy goes off to a sub-editor. They often never see it again. And that means when it comes to books, they're often quite happy just to have the process happen, and then they'll see it towards the end, and they don't tend to feed back much at that stage. But fiction, as you said, is quite different because it's you. So I'm wondering, when you had your first novel going through an editorial process, whether it was not a shock so much, but like a different sort of editorial process than you were used to, and whether that was a bit surprising for you.
Well, look, it's sort of different, but I actually do love the editorial process. I love being edited, and you know, we are all working to make this the best product we can, provided we get those ground rules straight, and it's not, you know, we're all being constructive about how we do it. You know, I often find that the editors, because I came to this late, you know, I'm an old white guy who'd been around for a while, and editors can be a little bit sort of intimidated. And I just say to them, listen, this is a constructive process. We're working together. There's nothing you can say to me that hasn't been said in a four corners edit session. You know, that is the toughest editorial session you will ever go through. You know, they rip it up, they throw it against the wall, they say, justify this, justify that. They put it all back together again. It's like, you know, but we are working to make this the best thing possible. And I love the edit process. There is so much that people see who are trained editors that, I didn't see, or I missed, or I should have seen, or, like that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Something I also tell myself now that we're lucky that we are working with editors and stuff, when I am, trying to make everything perfect or taking time over something because I'm not sure, I'm like, just keep writing, because it doesn't have to be perfect to start with,
No,
and someone else is going to come
right.
in
Yeah.
and help you shape this, but you just need to get it down.
You got to get the story down. That's
Yeah.
the most important thing. And, often the things that you miss are not massive they're not massive misses in the story. They're just simply about how making the mechanics of it all fit together and work properly for a reader that you didn't see because you're not the reader, you're the writer.
Yeah. Exactly. You're too close sometimes.
Have you had this storytelling drive from childhood? Like, did you dream of being a journalist, for example, when you're in high school, or were you reading a lot? All those things that a lot of writers have in common, which is childhood love of books.
Yeah, look, so I grew up in a house that was full of books. My father was an English academic at the ANU, and his specialty was 18th century literature and modern American poetry, none of which meant anything to me or was of any interest. But he was always reading a crime book or a thriller. So he had this massive library of crime and thrillers. And so when I started reading, when I was probably in my teenage years, really started reading, those were the things I gravitated to, because those are the things that I loved reading, and he had a great library of them. But I also, I started wanting to be a journalist when I was pretty young too. I was about 14, and I was writing for the school newspaper, and it was the only time I'd ever done anything that I didn't really have to try hard at, It just one of those things that sort of came to me very naturally. And people said to me, wow, that's really good. And no one had really said anything on anything else I'd ever done. No one had ever said that. And so I thought, oh, well, this is great, and you have those conversations with your parents, what am I going to be? I want to be a journalist. My father said, no, you don't want to be a journalist. They're all frustrated writers. They're drunks. You don't want to do that. So I went off on a different tangent. And then, of course, that's what I should have done all the time. And I came back to it in my 20s, and that's where I went. But,
what did you start with?
I went to art school.
Ah, interesting. So you've always had creative sort of flair.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. I did not find that anywhere in your bio, Michael.
No, there you are.
Do you still do other kinds of art?
That's something that people don't know about you.
Yeah, you should have put that. Do you still do other kinds of art?
Well, I did a visual arts degree specializing in ceramics.
Yeah. So
I still do that.
I love that. We've had a few people chat on the show about how the importance to have other sort of creative outlets as well as the writing. So do you feel that doing your ceramics and sculpture, like, does that help your writing in any way?
No, I can't do the two at the same time.
No.
I don't have
no. So you mean like you completely compartmentalize?
It's completely different. It's quite weird, actually. I can't write a book and do that as well.
Wow. So you'll write a book for a while, and then
write for a while and then do that.
Wow, interesting.
Wait, it's good. It's a good thing to have when you send off your manuscript and you're waiting for everyone to get back to you with the months go by where they're doing the edit or reading and whatever, and eventually they get back to you. So I tend to do it like that, actually.
So instead of starting a new book in that time or just reading and relaxing, you would maybe go and do a project with your sculpturing.
Yeah.
So do you have your own kiln?
Well, I do, but I have. So I do it. I'm really into. This is a bit off the literary.
Not at all, because it's all about creativity. It's all about creative practice.
But I'm really into Japanese sort of reduction firing. So, which to do that, the final firing is a gas firing in a gas kiln, because you have to control the atmosphere in the kiln, and you have to take the oxygen out of it. So I do have a kiln to do my first firing, and then the second firing, which is the glaze firing, is a kiln at a different place where they have the gas, all the infrastructure, which I don't have.
So if this is like a ceramic technique that you didn't learn when you were doing your visual arts degree, if you want to learn new techniques, do you actually go and have lessons, or are you someone who can like look at some YouTube videos and then translate it into
skills? No, this is where I was when I was at college. That's what I was doing. My ceramics teacher was a guy called Mitsuo Soji, who's very famous Japanese Australian ceramicist, and his whole shtick was this thing, you know, and that's the rabbit hole I went down. And
Right.
yeah,
It's
so I'm still there.
yeah. So because I have a country music life and I have a country music podcast, and so I interviewed Sarah Storer quite a few times. She's won a lot of golden guitars. She's also now painting, and she
Right.
said so for her, she has that set up in a separate part of the house, and when she's frustrated with a song,
Yeah,
she'll go
You
to
go
the
and-
painting, and
Yeah.
then she said she'll just do that until she's like, oh no, I'm done with that now, and then she'll go back to songwriting. So I think she would also say she doesn't do both at the same time, but she kind of
Yeah.
uses them as a way to move creativity around.
yeah. Well,
Interesting.
I think that's, yeah, maybe it's that. I just find I just don't have the room for both things. I can't fit them both in my, you know, ones,
Yeah.
they both suffer if I try and do them both at the same time.
Got it.
I'm worried that's going to happen with the 2 books I'm trying to write at once. I feel like it's much better to be having to write one at a time, but
Well,
just-
Rachel, there's only one way to find out.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I'll
Oh,
let you
yeah.
know in a few
Wow.
months if
And
I'm
as,
still alive.
as Winston Churchill once said, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Okay, well, I need to put that on my board here near my computer so I can remember.
So, Michael, with story ideas, are you a writer who tends to, if an idea comes to you, just collecting ideas, waiting for the opportunity to write them out, or see if they actually turn into something, or do you actually think, okay, I'm now embarking on a new project, and I will just focus on this?
So I think ideas for me really take a long time to mature, and often there's something I've been thinking about for quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But they're the broader ideas, and I tend to start a book with an image. I have there's some sort of image for me that gives me the sort of platform to trampoline off into the other things. And also, you know, we were talking before about engaging people right up the front with something fairly compulsive and dramatic. And often that is not just action, it's image, it's place, it's you know, so that to me is where I start often. And certainly in the last couple of books, that's where I've started. But the themes and the sorts of things that I then go on in those books to talk about, I think are things that I've been thinking about for a long time.
Right.
And they're all bubbling away there. And sometimes the characters, I do work on characters, so I will work on characters completely separate of any narrative. So I have a file with characters in it, which I'm often adding to. And I haven't got a story for those characters until I have a story for those characters, if you see what I mean. Right.
Yeah.
So,
That's so interesting. I've actually never heard of another writer doing that, keeping characters separate. But it suggests also that they're just with you, and
they're things that are going constantly churning around, you know, like, and you're thinking, well, that's so there's a character in the previous book to this one, Smoke, which is the father character, who is this guy who's he's an older man who was a survivor of the gulags in Russia, and he immigrated to America, but he ends up being this sort of alcoholic dog shooter, you know, and that character I'd been working on for a really long time. Just, you know, not consistently, but just always thinking about and adding little bits to his character. And then when the story came along, I went, this is the story for this character, you know.
Yeah. So once you put a character in a story, can you let them go? Like, do you actually feel like, okay, I've done our business is concluded?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost like because I have the same experience actually with characters. There was some who will follow me around for a long time. I'm like, okay, that's where you belong, and now we're done.
Yeah.
Done
So,
put you to rest.
Yes, because otherwise it can get a bit crowded.
Yeah, it certainly can.
I don't think I've ever had a character hang around. Oh no, maybe Bridget actually. I started to write her in one book and then put her aside, and then she sort of came back in another book.
Okay, there you go. And you gave her whole book, and then had her another one. So, Michael, I imagine you're working on something else since you have characters with you and other story ideas. So, are you writing next year's book?
Well, it probably won't be. I'm not going to be that fast. It'll be the year after's book.
Okay.
But yes, I am. I haven't actually. This is again. I haven't actually started, but I know it.
Yeah.
I know where I'm going. I know what the themes are. I know what things I have to hit, and I know how. And it is actually going to be a sequel to Dust, in the sense that the
interesting.
2 cop characters are going to go on a further adventure, if you like, because there's so much that needs to develop between them, and the younger sort of idealistic cop has had the stars knocked out of her, and there's a lot for her to learn, and there's a lot.
I was actually going to ask you, would there be a series with this?
Yeah, definitely.
Characters?
That's just sort of I just think there's a lot in that relationship that can develop
Be
over
explored
the
more. Yeah.
next book or 2. I don't know how far it will go, but that's definitely what I want to go next.
Cool.
And so, are you a writer who likes to sit at your desk for hours on end? Because we find a lot of people are interested in writing process. So, do you tend to sit for hours on end? Are you a writer who writes in short spurts? Are you someone who needs a particular time of day for writing?
Yeah, I do need to pick the time of day. I'm not very good in the evening, so I
same.
I write in the morning, and I tend to start pretty early. Like I'll get up, make a cup of coffee, and go and sit at the desk. So, 7 o'clock. And I'll start, and I actually find those first few hours the most productive of the day. And there's something about not engaging with anything else too much that actually makes those hours quite productive. And so I'll work until lunchtime, but I do tend to have a pretty strict regime about putting down 1,000 words a day when I'm in the
So you don't wait for the muse to turn up.
No,
You sit
absolutely.
down and
I find it's just you'd be waiting forever. There's no point.
yeah.
Just sit down, start putting one word after another, and it'll come.
Yeah.
And there's nothing's permanent about what you're writing anyway.
No, exactly.
If it's not any good, you can always get rid of it. But
true.
I find that for me, I like working with deadlines, and so I have a whiteboard, and down one side I have an aspirational word count at the end of every week, and I put an aspiration beside it. Like if I can do 5,000 words a week, that's what I try and do. And then I put what I've really achieved next to that after every week. And it's a reminder every time I sit down that I'm either in front or behind or on target or whatever. But that helps me. It helps motivate me to actually make sure I try and meet that.
I kind of do that too. I have a goal where I want to be at the end of the week, and then I work out, how many words do I need to realistically achieve. I used to be harsher about myself on myself if I didn't make that word count, but then sometimes I'm realizing that thinking time, it's just as valuable. Some days you might write more than it, but other days you might write less, but you've taken the time to work out.
Absolutely, it's aspirational, but it helps you.
It does help you. If you've got a goal, you're more likely to get there. Yeah.
And actually, Michael, I had a question in mind when you were talking about characters, and then I lost it, and now it's back. So because you actually have such well-developed character voices and also great dialogue, so when you're keeping these characters and developing them or letting them develop in their own time I'm imagining that how they speak is a big part of that, and therefore you're hearing them as you're carrying them around, you're hearing them in your head. Definitely.
And I find dialogue, when we're talking about, show not tell or whatever, and not trying to explain everything all the time. It's just dialogue is so useful because there's so much you can say with dialogue. You can say with interaction between people about what sort of people they are and where they're going and what the situation is and where the tensions are in the relationships and all that sort of stuff. Dialogue is really a lot of fun to write.
I agree.
It's a really great thing. It's a really lot of fun to write, but it's also an incredibly important thing to get right. And it's the voice of each character is quite, you can't sort of labor it and make them seem different all the time because people aren't different all the time the way they talk to each other. But
that's a good point.
But it does it does tend to really inform the character, you know, over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of what I found so impressive about Dust, and I mean that literally as in I got an impression, was we have Aaron first, and we're not hearing him speak to others, but we have
He's
his voice.
internal, yeah.
Yeah, and then we have someone else's perspective of him, and it is quite at odds with that initial impression. And what I really liked about it, and what made the impression on me, was that kind of immediately set up a tension where I think, you know, I questioned my rush to judgment about who he was, and it also then sets up this whole idea of, okay, well, who else am I going to judge as a reader? So it almost became this extra layer of reading, for me at least, and I imagine that was deliberate on your part.
Yes, good. Yeah, he's a interesting character, isn't he? Like, he's just like, he's so vulnerable but confident in his own way as well, and he's just looking for love. You know, that's what he wants. He just wants someone to just, you know, take him out of this, you know. But he has no other real aspirations other than just, you know, wanting to be wanted or something, you know.
Yeah, and you can certainly see how, because he's such a compelling character immediately, because we find out quite a lot about him, but not more than we need to know, if you know what I mean. So we know that his mother's gone and that his father's disappeared, and he just had to get on with it. I think he's
just got to get on with his life and do what he can, you know. Yeah, that's right.
Which was this sort of liked the lack of victim mentality, because sometimes we can have characters who fall into that victim mentality of, oh, well, everything's happening to them, and then
that's right. And at one point, there's this point where he's discussing with this young woman who's ended up with, and she's sort of going on about, oh, you know, like, we've got nothing, you know, we've got nothing. He says, oh, so no, I've got somewhere to live, you know. It's like, it's better.
Yeah.
You know, he's like always thinking, you know, yeah, his life's pretty crap, but it's like he's making the most of it. You know, he's doing what he can.
It could be worse.
Yeah, could be worse.
It could be worse. So in some ways, it's, you know, obviously he's not going on to the next book, but
he is not going on to the next book.
But
I like Aaron.
But
so far I like him, but I'm only halfway through, so I guess anything could happen, right?
But it seems sad to leave him behind. But obviously we have to. That's the ruthlessness of writing fiction. I think it's also something that's come up in you talking about your storytelling, that ability to be ruthless with what's right for the story, and also with yourself. I mean, even keeping the aspirational number of words, and then the pass or fail number.
That's right. Yeah, not a good week.
No coffee for me first thing in the morning. Whatever it is. Well, Mike, I think we better let you go so you can get ready for tomorrow's writing. It is a Sunday at the time we're talking, and it's been so interesting to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well, we found out all sorts of things about Michael Brissenden in that, Rachel.
We did. I was looking up Japanese reduction filming while we were.
What an interesting individual, and I always find it so interesting when those sorts of things are not in people's bios, because sometimes they would go in as a point of interest for what we're doing now, to talking to him, but also just, I think the commitment to storytelling over the course of his career and how that's translated into his fiction writing. It is on the page, but not in an obvious way, as in you can't see the mechanics of it working. It's just that he's got that drive as a storyteller.
Yeah. No, that was very interesting.
Well, I'm going to let you go because you have 2 books to write and I have 1 to write.
Don't remind me.
We better get back to it and set our own aspirational numbers for word count.
Yes.
So,
what am I putting on my wall? I remember you said something about hell.
Oh, if you're going through hell, keep going.
Okay, that's right.
Winston Churchill. I think it was during World War II that he said it.
Perfect.
Okay. I don't want to wish hell on you. I think you're fine. But I'll see you on the other side. Bye.
Bye.